If you have a teenager who won't talk to you, or you work with young people who seem anxious, defiant, or completely shut down, this episode could change how you see them. What if the problem isn't their behavior, but whether they feel safe enough to be honest? Today, you're going to hear from a researcher who asked teenagers one simple question. When your mental health is struggling, what do you actually need? And their answers might surprise you. This is about connection before correction, presence before pressure, and why trust is the only thing that truly lowers anxiety. I'm Pam Dwyer, and this is Delay the Binge. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Suzanne Simpson. Dr. Simpson is an educator, researcher, speaker, and host of the podcast Get on Their Turf. She has spent over 3 decades supporting young people, both in classrooms and on a youth psychiatric unit, serving some of the most vulnerable teens. Her doctoral research focused on a powerful question: what do teenagers say they actually need when anxiety rises and substance use increases? Suzanne, welcome to the show. I'm so honored you're here.
Pam Dwyer, you have done your homework. You have done your homework. I have never had such an introduction. You know what I'm going to say.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next. I was sharing with you before we recorded how impressed I am with you helping young people find their voices and giving them confidence and self-esteem. I just love what you do. But instead of summarizing your work, I think it's just such a sad thing when we just summarize all your work. So can you tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you're passionate about right now?
Sure. So I go by Suzanne. I hate the doctor. I really hate the doctor. I was born into privilege that I could just work 12-hour days. That's all it was. I was born into a home of a lot of security who are we to put doctor in front of our name, except that I do it just by title because nobody knows me. But I am a teacher. I'm always clear that I am not a registered counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I taught for 20 years in a very academic program here in Canada. It's French immersion, so it's all in French. And I'd have, 7 lawyers and 5 doctors in a class of parents. And then I flipped in 2018 to the psychiatric unit as a teacher in a small classroom there. And our kids were there for average of a 3-week stay. We were an end of the road unit, so the kids had to have exhausted all community supports before they got to us. I might get tearful talking about this today because I'm still just shattered that we closed after I was there for 5.5 years. And just the stories, I couldn't bring stories home anymore. I lost 8 kids in my 5.5 years that I know of. And that's where I did my research. It was on that unit in this little classroom. And it was what did you need? What did you need as your mental health deteriorated and your substance use increased? And fascinating, there was not a single program, not a single worksheet, not a single framework that they said. It was what you've just introduced. It's all about connection, being supported, understood, and cared for. So that's my heart now. That's what I just feel that our youth are not doing well. Our whole world is disconnected. And what they said is what I need as an adult. So it actually speaks to humanity.
Well, and quite frankly, teenagers are little mini adults. They're starting their first job sort of thing called life.
Yep.
And they're learning things the hard way, but it's their lessons to learn. That's what my son reminded me one time. I was like, son, I'm just trying to help you from making a mistake. I don't want you to make a mistake. He's like, Mom, they're my mistakes to make.
Good for him. How old was he when he said that?
He was 18.
Good.
He wanted to get married, but I just...
Oh, okay, that's a little bit a bigger decision.
I know. I'm like, why don't you wait? There's no different. Just date. Date her.
The best advice I ever got as a mother, because I have 2 kids, my kids are 20, 21 now, was it is not my journey. It's their journey.
Yes, it is.
Now, early marriage, I'd have a hard time. My kids know I'm not paying for a wedding until they're 25. but really, it is their lives, and we want to micromanage, and we want to, bubble wrap, and we want to protect them from the world, and that's the worst thing for them, isn't it? They have to
learn
on their own.
I grew
Yeah.
up in a very dysfunctional way, but I still to this day think I learned more by getting out there on my own.
Mhm.
You know, it was the
As we
hard
all
way. It
did.
was hard knocks, but, it
And
made me who I am today, so
if you think about our careers, Mike, I'm guessing you'll say the same. The biggest mistakes I made that like are cringeworthy now that I'm 53, I'm just starting to share them from 30
yeah.
years ago because I'm so embarrassed. But those were what formed me the most. And those were the mistakes that I needed to make to get to where I understood. And I knew my craft. But I had to make the mistakes. We have to. It's all good.
Yes, you do. And just if it just deter what they need help with is how to use that pain for purpose. Sometimes they just the shame and the fear and the guilt, it consumes them, which is why they need people like you out there. Um, so you spent years, asking teens directly what they need instead of assuming. What did you what did they say? I mean, like, what was the majority of their answers? Was it what you expected?
So there were a few things that came out that I was gobsmacked with. I just want to, but if I could just preface this, and you probably read this then, I've written this, is that we all think we're hot stuff as adults. And I'll tell you, educators are the worst, where we know the kids and we know what they want. And if you look at the literature in education, it's all of these experienced teachers with decades saying what the kids want. And there's actually very little literature where we're asking the kids themselves. And that goes too, I think, for counseling books and therapeutic books. So the main thing that they said was they want to be supported, understood, cared for. I was like, that's it. 4 years of my life. That's it. I
That's
can
it
go
in a
home now.
nutshell.
Right. Just so basic. So basic. Support, understanding, and care. And those three, though, I mean, there's so much dialogue around each of those. But here's what's interesting is why did I have to do the research then?
Mhm.
So what I found and wrote about is that what the kids see that they need is also what the majority said that they are not getting. Now, my research was within education, within schools. We've got so many well-meaning educators, but there's a dichotomy of perspective. And adults, I think we think that we're giving them what they need, but you talk to the kids and they don't feel that. And I'm talking too about kids that weren't in psychiatric units that are high performing. I had a class president of a very affluent high school near here help me with my neurology piece, part of my thesis. And I had taught him and he read it and he said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. As hotshot class president, he's done a neurology degree. That's a very hard program to get into. And he said, I still needed it. So support, understanding, and care. Two things I think maybe, I mean, I'm not going to talk your ear off, but the two things that stand out within the research, number one is the power of understanding and what that means. And what came out over and over in my data is actually understanding is inextricably linked to not being judged. So I have said, if you want to shut down your kid, you want to end a conversation, you're a teacher and you want that kid out of the classroom, you start judging, act like you're judging, sound like you're judging, or look like a look on your face like you're judging. It shuts it down in a heartbeat. So how can we approach kids? But this is all of our relationships, because we're all like this, aren't we?
Mhm.
How can we approach another without judgment? And right now in our world, it is a very judgmental place. I am very guilty looking at politics around me. I'll be the first to say, right? I've had, contentiousness. I've had conflict over politics, and I can't imagine. I'm in Canada. I can't imagine the conflict in the States. And then how, though, to do that without judgment? I mean, that's an extreme, I think,
Right.
situation to be in, but it really is fundamental for healthy relationships. And so, as parents to their kids, you need to know your kid's neurologically wired for a negativity bias. So if you say something, they're going to take that 1,000 times more negatively than an adult would.
Right,
It's
because they're
neurological.
they're dealing with a lot of things, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainties, and they're just Yeah, they're super hypersensitive about things. So you're right.
Yep.
I've
And
seen that.
their brains aren't developed till 25 years old. That is another thing. And part of it is they don't have that connection still from the emotional brain, the limbic system, to the front, to the prefrontal cortex. So when you have a disconnection between your emotions and your reasoning, of course that's going to happen more. This is a neurological level. So taking that, then, like, understanding they will glom onto the negative and maybe misperceive things as they are a growing brain. And when we approach them, like, to not have that judgment. And so I did an interview with this wonderful woman who's like, get your head out of your butt. Like, if you want to understand somebody, you got to get your own head out of your butt. I'm like, oh, that's actually really good, because it means I have to take my own experience out of it, my own expectations, my assumptions, my own history. It's all got to go when I am in conversation with anybody. But, you know, we're talking teenagers. So that's number one. And the second one, this is I think, a powerful piece of information for educators and parents. I was gobsmacked. This is the biggest shocker I had, and nobody has guessed it when I asked them to hypothesize. I need to start bringing a bottle of wine to give it away if anybody does get it, because nobody has guessed this in a few years. So I asked 25 kids, what was the best thing about my psychiatric classroom? It's calm, play music, there's food, there's an espresso, there's books, like, super chill. I'm there, right? Nobody said anything to do with any of that. 25 students all had responses related with success. All 25. Meaning, I did a math question. I was able to read a little bit. I handed something in. Maybe I can graduate. I learned I like psychology. Maybe I can go to university. Every single one of them. And yet, how often do they act that they don't care? So I say they're lying. If they are acting they don't care, it's protective. They're lying. But what the thing is about success, you feel better about yourself. So there's your self-worth. But what I found in the kids that I worked with was it is their hope, and their hope for a future. Maybe I can change the script here. Maybe I can live on my own and break this cycle within my family. Maybe I can, like, pay the bills on my own and live a meaningful life. So it was very shocking to me, the extent. I mean, we could guess it, but the extent was it's very powerful information.
Wow, that is incredible, and I can
Mm.
relate to that. As I shared with you, I worked in youth ministry, and
Mhm.
and I found that I spent more time, counseling parents than I did the kids, because they weren't challenging, the kids to find their own identity, even if it was different than the parents. The parents
Right.
just wanted
Yeah.
to protect them and make sure that they're okay, which is normal for parents to do, a good parent. But the child just had no idea what they liked. They knew what their parents wanted them to like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? But the identity thing was big, and giving them a voice so that they can find themselves. A lot of times they feel like they don't have one.
Yeah. We are doing our kids zero favors if we're going to go in and fix the problem, or
Mhm.
avoid the problem, or talk through the problem where they should be managing it, right? Where they should be sorting that out, as they age appropriately, because it's called the big bad world of adulting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got to be ready.
You gotta be ready, and I think parents and anyone working with teens should remember that listening is a skill. Listening is not really, we don't work on that a lot, because what is listening? You know, listening is like, "Tell me more," instead of judging immediately and saying, "Well, you can't do that because blah, 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 blah." And that's why they're negative teens, that's why
Yeah.
they're down on themselves. They just think that
Yeah.
every thought they have is bad or wrong or failed.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
truth, it's not.
I looked all into listening. I did a deep dive on listening, and I'd say that teachers are really bad. Like, we're, we are bad listeners, and then you add a parent on top of that, because there's three things: we listen because we're supposed to be listening. I'm a good teacher or a good parent. I'm supposed to be listening, so it's kind of nominal. Or I listen to verify my assumptions. There they go again. complaining again. This is what I knew. Or to plan our next response. How often do we listen and we're thinking of how we're going to respond to that versus just authentically listening? It's hard. It's a hard
Well, and
thing
you
to do
need
these days.
a huge dose of empathy, right, as a parent.
Hmm.
Because if you don't put yourself or remember when you were their age, sort of thing, we forget
Yeah. Yep.
what it feels like. So I understand you've worked with teens in a psychiatric unit. Now, that is like seeing crisis up close, like being on the
Hmm.
battlefield to me. It's what it sounds
Hmm.
like. Can you
Yep.
help us understand what trauma actually does to a teen's nervous system and why is behavior so often like protection? And it's not rebellion. Like parents think that they're just rebellious and they don't want to do anything they're supposed to do. But I think in reality, like you said earlier, they're protecting themselves. Is
Yes, the opposite of trauma is connection. So that answering you is multifaceted, really, on so many levels. But for kids with trauma, we know, well, I've not done the research, but research shows that we know trauma affects the brain at a neurological level. Gray matter decreases. We know, so volume changes in that thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the emotional part of the brain, I just lost an earring, the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system. So there's a lack of, like, the volume changes, and then there's a lack of connection too between those two parts. We know it affects your HTP because it's like all, your amygdala, your hippocampus. At a structural level, trauma affects the brain. And what I say to teachers is, look at Naomi Osaka. She was fined $15,000 as a tennis player who in 2022 made $60 million. dollars. And she would not speak after that French Open match. And she said it was because of anxiety and debilitating anxiety and just mood and all of these things. And they fined her. Now, if she had broken her leg on the court and she had a bone sticking out of her skin, would they have fined her? Absolutely not. She goes off to the hospital. So my point on that is, and the reason I use her as an analogy is, we don't understand the unseen. And then we have assumptions of people of lashing out and how they might behave and, words that they might say without an understanding that there is a neurological impact from trauma. I am
yes.
not excusing poor behavior, and I don't agree that, well, then just let it happen. That's not what I'm saying, but it does impact. And then that causes the list, what comes out causes stuff like misbehavior, fight or flight or freeze. And kids are impulsive and they can react, immediately and
Hmm.
loudly and throw the F bombs and knowing that they shouldn't be doing things and yet they do it and lashing out. So at school, there's less focus. It's harder to just sit there. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So that's for kids with trauma. And we do know healing can happen from that malleable brain. And we know that neural pathways can strengthen. But I just want to, Pam, also bring up, what about a kid who's not had a lot of trauma, who's lashing out and misbehaving? There's your connection right
Yeah.
there. And what I can say that I saw in that psychiatric unit is, I got those kids that were dealing the drugs, that were terrified when our wonderful RCMP, our police liaison officer, came in because they had been arrested and had their own, the kids that were suspended from school and those kids. And with me, they, I just, they just want to be loved and want to know that they are worthy. And what they don't say is they want people to show them that they're worthy. And that all does come from connection.
Hmm.
And so that is your number one. So for parents whose kids are lashing out, or, not engaging at all and acting like they don't care, or what the conflict that's going on, you start by, where does the connection begin? And that's like my whole get on their turf mantra. That's what it is. Hey,
Yeah.
what do you want to go do? There's a spectrum. If they're really far away, it's like, hey, do you want to go get a burger? Like, do you want to go for a walk? What do you want to do? Like, getting on their turf is, what do they want to do? And then your next level could be like, where do they want to be? Kids don't want to be finding their mom and dad in an office, Pam. What they love is a parent knocking on their door, hey, can I come in, and plunking on the floor and just chatting,
Yes.
getting on their turf in their area. And so what do they want to do? Where do they want to be? And then the last one I talk about is how are they? Like getting on their turf with how they are might be psychologically. So if your child's got significant anxiety, go learn about it. Or depression, or if we've got a lot more kids suicidal, go learn dialectical behavior therapy and you become that advocate for your child even more. So that's what it is. It's very, very easy. And I have watched behavior specialists with behavior charts and graphs and colors and color coding, and they're working with the home so that there's not the conflict. And my response is they just want to go for a burger with mom and dad. They just want mom and dad to say, hey, let's go spend time because you are so worthy. I want to go spend some time with you. That's how great I think you are.
Yes,
Pretty easy.
investing in them yes.
Pretty
Time is
easy.
so much more valuable than anything they can spend on them or give them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just getting on their level. We do a lot of research right now on I call it quiet depletion. And it's
Ooh.
for high performing people, not just teens, but adults as well. We are so busy, right? And we're just doing what we're supposed to do, whether we want to or not. We're going through the motions, checking off the
Yep.
boxes. And for teens,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's probably just as, or if not more, stressful. And so they're doing all the things that like a robot, like you're doing everything you have to do, is
Mm-hmm.
correct, even though, and so what you eventually do is you start finding ways to cope with those emotions that you're ignoring. You're getting stressed, you're getting exhausted. You are mentally exhausted. And I
Mm-hmm.
love when you talk about the frontal cortex versus the lower part of the brain, which I refer to as the caveman.
Yeah. It's the reptilian brain, right?
Yes. Yes,
Because
because
it's the
it just
first.
wants to comfort you
Yeah. Well,
temporarily, and that's
also
where addiction comes in, right?
it's the first developed too. It develops first. Our brain develops back to front.
Okay.
So as the
Okay.
brain developed over history, it's that back limbic system that developed first. And in a child growing up, the last developed part of the brain is the front, is that reasoning, rationale, logic at the front, prefrontal cortex.
Yep, and it's like it's moving forward, I guess,
Yeah,
but
it is. Mm-hmm.
but to bring that frontal cortex online, that's where we teach the pause. You see,
Mm,
delay the binge is all about the purposeful pause, where you take a moment to
right.
think, okay, why am I about to consume my sixth glass of wine tonight during the week?
Mm-hmm.
What's
Mm-hmm.
really going on? But I wish so much adults would ask that of teens. All right, their behavior is unacceptable. They're being horrible, very defiant, but what's really going on? And
Totally.
I
There's a
don't know
reason.
if parents ask that question, what's really happening?
But here's
Why are they
part of it.
Hmm?
Like you said, like parents are frazzled on their own, right?
Yes.
And more frazzled than when we were growing up. When I was growing up, I don't remember the chaos around me, of the world around me and everything that's happening globally. And then on top of that, work and finances, and you got to pay the bills. I think that we have a double whammy now, because I do think that
Mhm.
parents are more frazzled than ever.
Yeah.
And there's more financial insecurity, which just compounds it. And now we're putting teenagers that are already on screens with that, with mom and dad going through the same thing.
Yes. But you've pointed this out so much. I was just so impressed with all of your work, but you point out that adults, are going through the same type of stuff as
Mhm.
the teens. And it should help us relate to them as an adult, or the teens relate better to the adults in their lives. But
You know my
moving
wish? Sorry, go
what?
ahead, Pam.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
what do you wish? I wanna hear.
My wish, so I was asked the question a few weeks ago and it just came to me, how do you avoid burnout? And look
Mhm.
at parenting, like single parents, oh my goodness, or both parents are working a ton. And I was just asked this too from a teaching, when I was doing a teacher's workshop. And I'm not saying that you can ignore everything around you, but I wonder if we could shift our focus from all the doing to the being. Just
Yes. Oh,
be. So it doesn't
I love
take
that.
away everything. I'm not saying that, But for example, for teachers, there's a long list of everything we got to do in assessment and evaluation and report cards and make sure that they have this and that and this and that and all these things on our plate. And it's a lot. And we still have to do them. But if I could just be and sit with the kids and connect with them and have that reciprocated joy in my classroom, I think it takes the level of stuff. It's still busy. Busy and stress are two different things. Burnout and just working a lot are not the same thing. So, you know, you
Right.
can still be busy, but just to be.
And right. And I think, I've read a lot, and you probably know a lot more about this than me about transcendental meditation, where they're trying to incorporate that into schools because
Mm,
it's really, they're showing statistically that it helps students do better on their tests and stuff. If they just take a moment to just silence everything in their minds, quiet, and it doesn't have to be a long time. That's what we talk
for
about the
sure.
pause. It's literally
Right.
seconds. And it's just giving the frontal cortex time to bloop, come back online
Yeah.
so you can think.
Yeah. I would think for people with trauma that you work with, that pause is going to be a lot harder
It
because of the
is, yeah.
neurological impact of trauma.
It
It
really
feels a
is, and
lot.
there's so many exercises that we offer with Delay the Binge that help with that, but it's
Mm,
small, small steps, and you
right.
have to give yourself grace because it doesn't happen overnight. It took
I
a
was
long
just,
time to
yeah.
create that situation.
Yeah, and to be kind to ourselves. That's the other thing I'd
Mhm.
wish for is that we could be kind. Because listen, we all make mistakes, and I'm the
Yes.
very first to say we need to take responsibility as the adults. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, and it's not a pastime, and it's not an afterthought. We are up. We are up. We've got little kids who need us to step up to the plate, but can we have grace within that responsibility and knowing that we all make mistakes and it is okay, and we don't have to wallow and be crippled by it. And our
Yes.
kids just want us to be there, right?
Well, and
Just be
parents think
there.
they're failures a lot, especially
Yeah.
when the kid's behavior is not what
Mhm.
they think it should be. Then they feel like, "What did I do wrong as a
I know.
parent?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So much,
Yeah.
right, to deal with,
Yeah.
like you said, if you just step back and if you keep it simple. I love how you focus on that, the simplicity of it. You need to remember that this is let's keep it simple, and if you just I have to share with you something I'm very proud of. My son, when he was in 3rd grade, he's 36 now. When
Oh,
he was in 3rd grade, his teacher called me in for a meeting, and I thought, "Oh, no, what did he do?" And she says, "I just want you to know I asked the class the other day how we learn." My son, raised his hand and said, "By messing up."
that's so great. Such a good oh, wow. That's aw well,
Yeah.
'cause okay, so here's what I'm interpreting from that, though. He had the freedom to make mistakes at home. To say
Yes.
that, that's power so let's like, can we just pause on that and think about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
We need to let our kids know it's okay to make mistakes.
Mhm.
And what happens when we make mistakes is we are allowing for teaching and correction to occur so that the brain can strengthen those neural pathways. And it's like, repeat, try again, reset, repeat, you know, because it's emotional regulation. It's learning how you can navigate life. And we want, I don't think kids feel the freedom to make a mistake and in the classrooms too. Right. And I actually think we should be welcoming it as learning opportunities. I'm not saying we don't do consequences. I'm the very first person to be into the word discipline and consequences with connection. Absolutely. But that your son said that speaks so much about what he had at home, that he was not fearful of messing up, which we all do.
Yes, it is human. It is
Mhm.
just life, and that's how we learn, and so I have taught both of my kids that, drilled it into their head with the plus one theory, which we talked about a little bit before,
Mhm.
but teens feel unsafe a lot, and so I guess my primary focus when I was raising my little ones was just to help them feel safe in making mistakes, in learning, and just knowing that mommy loves you no matter how many times you make a mistake.
And that builds self-worth that just gets to flourish in that, right?
It
That you're
really
you're
does.
allowed to do that.
Mhm. And I know, I mean, they're amazing adults, but they still made a lot of wrong choices, but like he reminded me, they were his to make, so
Mhm. I love that. I love it.
So I did not feel safe growing up, but
Mm.
I wanted to point this out with you because I'm so in awe of your work.
Mm.
And I just want you to know how important it is. And
Thank you.
you probably know this, but when I was growing up, I grew up in an abusive, dysfunctional situation. And we used to go and just steal food from convenience stores down the road because
Mm.
we didn't have
Mhm.
an adult around for weeks at a time. And so
Wow.
we would go looking for food. You get clever about finding ways to find food. Anyway, so this one guy, Mac, and we were stealing hot dogs from him for weeks. It was summer. And one day he says, "Hey, you two," my sister and I, he says, "Stop." And we thought, "Oh no, we're going to jail." And we turn around, he's holding a bottle of mustard. And he says, "Y'all been taking my hot dogs for weeks. Don't you want some
Wow.
mustard?" And we thought,
Wow.
"Yes, sir." He goes, "Don't steal from me. If you need food, you just ask me and I'll help you."
Wow.
And so we walked out, but you see, this is the sad thing. This is where I was not safe. I didn't even know what to call what he did. I never experienced kindness.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, but to this day, it took him seconds to make an impact on me for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's a story. Wow.
So when we see young people, you have to let them know that you see them and that you hear them and that they matter. That impacted me that I would not be sitting here with you
Mm.
discussing this right now if he had not done that.
Wow.
That's how much of an impact we can have on our young
Yeah,
people,
we
you know?
can. And can I just say, Pam, you're telling your story, and I'm always testing what, the kids said that they needed. And everything in that story is what the teenager said that they needed for wellness. He was supportive. He was supporting you.
Yes,
He was understanding. He knew that there was a reason you were stealing, and he was not judgmental within it. And he cared for you. Like, that is the umbrella: support, understanding, and care. And what that looks like comes out, I think, in every single story like that.
exactly, and I just that's why what you do is so critical because we need to remind people how much it matters that we give teens this. We give them those 3 things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you, I work with those kids that look scary on the street, right? Like, I'm now in alternate education, so the kids that I now have are those ones that people would cross the street for. And you know what? They are no different than anybody else, and no different from the high performing, neuroscience graduate. They just want to be appreciated and affirmed and
Yes,
cared for and understood and have those connections. I have great conversations with these kids, great conversations. And there's just no difference. They just, but then here's the difference is that you can become really good at putting on a protective layer. So like I said about that whole success thing, it's a great protection to act like you don't care in so many ways. So there's the facade that comes out and what we actually might see physically that might make people cross the street.
exactly. Yeah, and yeah, the "I don't care" thing is just a facade.
It is. It
Well,
is.
that, brings me to this. I wanna revisit this again because the connection coming before correction, I love
Mm,
that.
mhm.
And so, why can't a teen hear us if they don't feel safe first? I know we've touched on that here and
Yeah.
there, but, they're not going to hear us if they don't feel safe,
No,
correct?
but right, but I wanna make a caveat there.
Okay.
This just hit me that I need to be making this distinction. When I say connection before correction, I don't mean that's the only time that you connect. Your kid's done something, let's connect. You are setting the stage and building the foundation for when we know that they will make mistakes. And you are doing that on a daily basis so that when you do need to do correction, it's not going to be a last minute thing. And it's not too late. There are a lot of parents that feel that it's done and it's not. But when I say connection first, I really need to make sure I drill this in that that's actually a way of being with our children.
Yes.
And it is foundational and it is progressive connection. And they are going to make a mistake. We are going to have to.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. It does, because when a young person feels disconnected, they're already scanning, right? And I know this personally because that's what I used to. I used to scan the room to find out who's dangerous, who's the worst threat, and who is safe.
Sure.
And so
Sure.
when we come in with advice or lectures, it just doesn't land, right? And so what builds trust in those moments? How do you get through that?
Well, okay. So here's a big one. I use this all the time, teaching especially. Here's what I said. I'd look at a kid and I try not to look angry. Like the looks on our faces really do matter. And I had
Mm.
this one kid, he got in a fight with somebody and we're about to go to this assembly. And I'm like, talk to me, Jack. That's all I said. Just talk to me. I'm not mad. I'm not joyful. I'm just like, talk to me. But we had a relationship where I said that was not threatening. And tears welled up in his eye. Like he didn't, that's all that I had to say is talk to me, meaning, what's going on? What's happening? And it's powerful. Really though, like I can't have a judgmental tone or look on my face or anything that would come across. So when we build our connection first, then that's going to mitigate any misperception. But it's that I want to hear from you first. Another thing I say is ask 3 questions. Maybe you don't know what the 3 are yet, but find 3 questions before you get into anything. I think that's a powerful step and a tool of, hey, like, what's up? First question. Or maybe, hey, do you want to talk to me? Or, hey, how are you feeling? And then, okay, I'm just curious to know, like, what led you to that? Whatever way we can frame that, it's not judgmental. And what did you want to get out of it? Or what did you think would be good in it? Or how are you feeling now? So it's really being careful of not acting judgmental within it, but just coming up to what's actually happening first. There's your connection. Because what's happening too is my own head's coming out of my butt. Let's let them talk. And I'm the adult in the room and I'm going to get information that I can. And then we proceed. Because so often, how often do we get people are angry, we overreact. Sometimes maybe the adult does need a timeout to cool down first because you never, ever, 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 ever engage with a child or teenager when you're not regulated. You just don't.
That's how you break trust. Yes.
Oh, that's how things go bad, right?
Yeah.
That's where you get conflict and yelling and things that are said that you can never take back. And same thing teaching. Like I learned it. It's learned. I do think it's learned, but it's just finding out first and moving from there. And you might not know what your questions are going to be, or you might not know what to do. That's fine. You're just first gather some information in a non-judgmental way and then take it from there.
And that's being present.
It is.
Right. Because I know
Yeah.
I've learned that if you just get on their eye level
Yeah.
and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's really going on? Tell me.
That was in my research too. A student mentioned, like, I was connected with his teacher because he sat at my level, my eye level. So even the physicality of hovering versus I'm going to sit on the floor with you, we're going to sit on the couch together. There's something powerful that you and I are at the same eye level, that I'm seeing you. I see you.
Yes. Yes.
And then you let them talk.
Yeah. And that listening skill that we were talking about. I mean, there is one question that shows you're listening to, I have found success with in my career is that, can you tell me more?
Yes. Good one. Yes.
And man, they are just, then they're like, oh, she's really paying attention. She's listening to me.
Absolutely.
I
That's a
matter
good question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, if anybody wanted to take anything away, just ask them to tell you more. And then they will.
Yeah, they will. If they think you're not judging.
Right.
Because as soon as they spot judgment, even if they're not right on it, they're done. And they said this to me. I had this all over, but in the research was over and over and over again. As soon as they felt an iota of judgment, they just stopped talking.
Well, and two, a lot of times maybe adults think, if they feel judged, maybe they feel like they think they're just not getting their way, but it's not. It's just being acknowledged and not judged, right?
Totally. And you can still do consequences. I'm not saying you give a little hug and go away, right? Like I really feel that kids do need boundaries. They need to know the rules. My experience was I was a tough nut. Like I have high expectations. And I ran a very tight ship, both in my home and with my students. And I found that they thrived on it because you know what? It showed that I cared more and they got it. And even on the psych unit, I was tough about, we had a dress policy. I mean, whether or not I liked it or not, we had a policy. I've got to stick with it. I did not allow anybody on like any sort of social media, and I had a zero tolerance rule. So they lost the laptop the whole time they were with me. They could work on the big massive computer. And it was smooth. It was good because they understood this is for your benefit because you need to learn this as an adult and I want you to be successful as an adult. So if I sweep this under the rug, you're not learning what I know that you need for emotional regulation as an adult. So I have consistently found kids appreciate it. They like knowing the limit and they know that you care. And you don't have to be
Yes.
mean about it. You don't have to be mean about it at all. You build
Mm-mm.
that relationship.
It's just structure,
Hmm.
And that's what I
Hmm.
craved growing up, without adults around. My
Right.
friends at school would get grounded and stuff, and they would just be so angry about it, and in my
Right.
mind, I was thinking, "I wish I would get grounded."
Right.
I just
For
wanted my
sure.
parents to care enough to
Yeah.
ground me.
Right. Perfect. Yes.
I craved it.
Yeah.
I wanna touch something deeper for, just a brief moment. So, when adults aren't present emotionally, physically, a young person doesn't stop needing connection. So what they do is they adapt, right? They
Mm-hmm.
scan the rooms like we talked about. They
Yeah.
manage their energy and they either get loud or they disappear. And what looks like bad behavior is often survival behavior. Or what looks like defiance, might actually be fear. So, or laziness. That's a big one for teens. Adults think they're lazy or, you know, laziness is just hopelessness. Like you said, there's no hope.
Mm-hmm.
So, so why try, Why do it? What looks like attitude might be anxiety. So when we ask what's wrong with this kid, maybe the better question is what happened to this
Mm-hmm.
kid? So how often is
Mm-hmm.
behavior really a connection problem? Do you
Always.
always every time?
I can't think of a time it's not a connection problem. That's a great question. I can't consider a time. And hey, though, it might be connection with your own self,
Mm, that's
right?
yes,
Here's
that
one.
is accurate.
I feel stupid in school. And it is protective then to act like you don't care and be that person that's always in trouble. Well, there's a lack of connection with your own self, maybe your own abilities, maybe with your self worth, maybe with your self efficacy, like believing you can do it. So I actually am wondering if that's always it in one way or another connection. And here's the thing, we are all wired for connection. So if you don't get connection in one place, say with mom and dad, you're going to sure find it somewhere else.
Yes, I guess that's what the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, you're going to find it somewhere. So we have here in Vancouver, it's called the Downtown East Side, and it's a very high percentage of homelessness. We have a toxic drug crisis, worst in Canada, and it's all on the Downtown East Side. And I keep watching our experts, quote unquote, fix the problem, and they're dealing with housing and feeding programs, etc. And I've not heard anybody talk about the trauma, which is a very, very high trauma score for people who are homeless. It's been researched in other parts of our country. And I feel that they're just throwing darts at peripheral elements. And I had students that were from this area, from the downtown east side, and they said to me, it's my people. We get each other. We've all been through crap and we understand. So I know kids that are drawn there and it's like, it's an unsafe area. I mean, the Skid Rows. And yet they're drawn because we are wired for connection, Pam. So if they
Yes,
didn't get it from mom and dad, they have found their people. So in all these areas of cities that are like this with high rates of homelessness, high substance use, high mental health disorders, I think our number one issue there is connection. And we're not talking about it in trying to mitigate the problem. It's
exactly. I
their
mean, we're
people.
throwing money at it. They
We
throw
throw a lot
money
of
at it
money.
or
Yeah.
food, and they're not understand they need to get to the core of
Yeah.
why it's just like with
Yeah.
bariatric surgeries, they get the tool, but they still regain the weight.
Right.
They didn't address the minds, why they're there in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah. I
Ugh,
think
I'm
that
just
the
so
opposite of substance use is connection. And I talked to this wonderful psychologist who said, I think the opposite of heroin is connection. Because if you think about it, why are you doing drugs? Well, high anxiety. Well, right there's a disconnection with my own self, right? Drugs take it all away. Or my own trauma and I am not feeling loved and the drugs take it all away. The list goes on and on and on,
just to numb out, just to numb it out. That's that
which is
quiet depletion again.
disconnection. That's
Mm.
disconnection.
So for adults, I love how you do, reference that and there are adults, if there are adults listening right now who didn't grow up feeling seen
Hmm.
and they still carry, that sense of unworthiness, it keeps creeping back up. How does your research speak to them?
So, first of all, I want to empathize with the complexity of that.
Okay.
I did a few podcasts with this woman who wrote a book. It's called North of Normal. Her name's See a Sunrise Person, and she was raised, she'll say this, crazy. She's written 2 books, became a movie. And s she felt that she just needed the people in her life and didn't have them, and she's the very first person to say, "I'm not ever gonna be fully healed." So I asked her about healing, but
Mhm.
it's a journey. So I
Yes.
don't think there's an end po I think it's important to acknowledge there's not an end point to healing from what has been done to you or what has not been done to you. Like you never had a curf or you never got grounded or, in
Mhm.
trouble. And she has consistently worked throughout her life with lots of therapy and relationships, and she's in a good marriage and all of this, but she recognizes this is growth. I think the number one healing for anybody is relationships and healthy relationships.
Yes.
Healthy. And you need to know how worthy you are to be treated well, that you
And
are
a lot
you
of
are
people don't
born to
realize
be
it
treated
doesn't
well.
take a lot of time to be one of those people in someone else's life. Like I mentioned earlier, just a handful of adults saw me growing up and treated me with
Mhm.
kindness, and
Mhm.
it didn't fix everything, and I still had to live in my same environment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they saw me, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not a teen anymore, of course,
Sure.
but I can still remember, I can see it so clearly, the look on their face they were genuinely concerned about me,
Yeah.
and I
They
remember that
cared.
in
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah. And I also, like I said earlier, like those micro moments, like those Hamlets.
Mm,
I listen, I wasn't raised with trauma. I have a trauma score of a big fat 0. So I say this softly because I don't know what it's like. But what I have observed and researched and spoken to people about is it is a lifelong quest. And then to actively choose good people into your life and to actively choose to know that you deserve to be treated well. And if you're not being treated well, you go back to the drawing board and that you can switch that script on your upbringing if you have your own children and be that
yes.
mom. Like my friend Sia, I said to her, how do you know when you would be totally healed? And she said, when I put myself first before my kids, I know I will have fully healed because she is so overcompensating from her own neglect from mom that she's at everything her kids do. So her kids, she's raising them well, but she recognizes this is because of her upbringing, but there's healing within that for her too, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot of work because you have tendencies from growing up like that, and so you have
Yeah.
to I always tell people I have to think 3 times, okay, every time I do something.
For
It's
sure. I
the
can
the
imagine.
tendency from me growing up, I have to think, "Oh, that's wrong," and then what's the correct thing to do? And then if you have faith and you become a Christian, that's what would Jesus do?
Mhm.
So I have to think
Mhm.
3 times before I even act or speak to
But
someone.
but here's the thing, Pam, you know that you need to. There's your starting point. You've recognized that you have to do that and you're living within that. And that's where it all starts. You're not being impulsive. You're not, ignoring what you need to be doing for your own healing and growth.
Do you think kindness plays a big part in dealing with young people's nervous systems over time? I mean,
Yeah. So we didn't fully get into the nervous system
yeah,
question, did we?
no.
Absolutely. Here's what it is it brings safety. So do you work about polyvagal theory? Have you talked about polyvagal? It's the vagus nerve. It's basically
Well, yes,
befriending your nervous
yes.
system.
We haven't
Yeah,
discussed
Stephen
that much on
Porges.
this
Okay.
show, but yeah,
So
I am aware of it.
so if for people that have had trauma, I have been told that the polyvagal theory, it's Steve Porges and Deb Dana have pioneered it earlier on. It's understanding your nervous system and befriending your nervous system. So, people with trauma, there's higher cortisol levels and you wake up in an elevated state, and the list goes on of the neurology. And yes, just the kindness to the nervous system. That's why you brought up meditation. That's mindfulness. And we know neurologically it actually does calm the brain. And I actually think kindness brings joy, which is so much more powerful than happiness. And when you
Yes.
have that, we have more regulated systems because we're feeling safer. And with trauma, it is feeling completely unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
So on the contrary, to have safe spaces, kindness is a huge part of that because you're not being yelled at. You know that somebody's not going to yell at you. You know that they are supportive, understanding, and caring because they are kind, because that
Mm-hmm.
encompasses all of that. So absolutely, I think that and those micro moments of it, right? That of just
Yes.
constantly this Hamlet around people is my dream of kindness throughout life.
Yes. And I think that's why it matters, because kindness isn't weakness. It's like a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah,
permissiveness. It's lowering, and it's not lowering your standards. It's like leadership,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Well,
it has a ripple effect.
look at your guy with the hot dogs. What a story, hey? That was
Yes,
kindness
I
to
love
the nth
telling that to
degree.
people.
That is such a great story, and the impact of that. I'm guessing too. Your nervous system with him would have just kind of
It was,
because you didn't
but
have to go
I just
on
the whole way I was
guard.
walking with my bag, because he gave us
Mm,
a bag for the mustard and the hot dogs, and my sister and I were just not even talking. We were like, "What just happened, and why?" So,
yeah,
oh man, Suzanne, thank you for being
great
one of
story.
those steady adults in this world. You're just like Mac to
Pam,
me. So,
thank you for your time. I love, what I love what you're doing, especially is hitting the core of humanity.
mhm. And if we just
Mm,
focus on that,
yeah,
Suzanne,
yeah.
even like you mentioned, the politics and all the how people love to hate right now, and just I don't know. It's really sad right now, and I hate to see what it's doing to our young people with anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
depression,
I
suicide,
know. Yeah,
drugs, all of that for them to cope.
yeah, yeah.
So can you share where our listeners can find you and
So
continue learning from you?
sure. First is my website. I actually have a free guide right now about connecting with your kids. It's drsuzannesimpson.com on the main page.com. And there's a newsletter to sign up for there too. I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Suzanne Simpson, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube channel is Dr. Suzanne Simpson. Just the same thing everywhere. So it's easy to find.
Truly, thank you, Suzanne. And for everyone listening, all of her links are going to be in the show notes, so don't worry about writing it down. And if this conversation resonated with you, whether you're raising a teen or working with teens or still healing from your own story, kindness matters more than you realize. Presence matters more than perfection, and the small moments you create today may still be shaping someone decades from now. I'm living evidence of that. And yes, I'll see you next week.